Ambassador Maria Santos gets caught in a gladiatorial arena when a diplomatic dinner goes awry, squaring off against beings who literally remake reality with the spoken word. She changes the physics of the arena with everything that she says. But she learns that the insectoids don't want to kill her at all. They just want to communicate in the only way their species knows how. Through battle, they evolved from beings who could only express advanced ideas through violence. Maria realizes that conventional diplomacy has failed because she's been speaking in entirely the wrong language. The gimmick, the insectoids, are absolutely desperate to spread the word of an imminent threat to the galaxy, but their motive is so unrecognizably alien and their means of communication so completely untranslatable that they end up coming across as sounding like they're rattling off death threats. Maria's measured speaking style in the heat of battle inadvertently establishes a universal translation protocol which quickly commandeers the arena and transforms it into a peace summit. She dies not as a survivor, but as author of the first interspecies emotional dictionary. The ceremonial dinner had been proceeding on course until Ambassador Maria Santos brought up the weather. Not that weather had been the point of shower-related controversy on Cathara Prime anyway. The twin suns of the world made a permanent golden twilight that most beings of light found enjoyable enough. But as soon as Maria observed how gorgeous the weather was, the chittering around the obsidian table ceased completely. 23 pairs of multifaceted eyes swiveled toward her with a focus that sent her diplomat senses on high alert. The Catharans had been fairly hospitable during initial negotiations. Their translator, a living, breathing synthesis of mantis and cathedral organ, had mediated 3 fruitful days of discussion about trade routes and cultural exchange. But now, as Maria eyed the clear leader of the diplomats and watched his mandibles work, what she'd learned was their version of nervous laughter. It occurred to her that something fundamentally had changed. The ambassador tells of sky music. The translator buzzed, its voice a polyphonic blast that made Maria's teeth hurt. This is ... unexpected. No sooner had Maria managed to voice the question of what she had said wrong than the floor under her chair fell away. It went on long enough for her to realize that diplomatic immunity apparently didn't come with a rider for surprise trapdoors. When she hit the sand, she hit it hard, and it was a formal dress uniform, so it did not help at all with the impact. Overhead, the dining hall was gone, replaced by a dome of what appeared to be crystallized bone rising impossibly high. The bioluminescent veins on the walls throbbed, sending shadows flickering across a space large enough for a small city. Maria struggled to her feet, retching out sand and taking stock of herself. Her ceremonial sidearm was still in its holster, and she didn't much think the diplomatic blaster would be of use against whatever this facility had been meant to hold. The sand beneath her feet was warm, almost living, and she had the feeling it moved in response to her own. Protocol 7, she whispered, pressing her panic beacon. The device beeped once and was done. Nothing, so far as they could tell, had been overlooked by the Catharans. There was a low rumbling, and when Maria looked, she could see viewing platforms forming along the inside of the dome. The Catharan delegation marched out onto these platforms, their multifaceted eyes shining like stars in the bioluminescence. It was not anger, she discovered, with increasing confusion. They looked ... excited. The voice of the translator resonated from loudspeakers out of her sight. Ambassador Santos utilized the convergence protocol. Let the expression begin. What protocol? Maria screamed up, but it was as if her voice was being gobbled up by the arena's acoustics. It was there that she first understood. Her enemy, it rose out of a stretch of wall that somehow simply dissolved away, exposing a tunnel, which most certainly had not been present a few seconds ago. The figure was vaguely anthropomorphic in shape, but that's where any semblance to things we know about stopped. The carapace, chitinous and midnight black, pulsed with veins of silver, and its legs, too long and too jointed, moved with a serpentine grace that seemed to imply that they might have been more to keep the creature's body centered on the horseflesh, and less a matter of its actually being boned so much as merely suggested. But it was the head of the creature that caused Maria's breath to catch in her throat. Its head was not really a head, but a complicated tangle of crystal shapes that changed pattern when it moved. It was fascinating to watch the crystals, as they almost seemed to form ... faces. The beast entered the pit, and Maria saw something that sent her diplomatic training alarms blaring. It wasn't carrying weapons. Its arms had hands that were almost human, for a certain value of human, as in human with silver claws and too many joints. But those hands were empty, raised in what any reasonable witness would interpret as a peaceful gesture. The Duchess of Avondale nodded again, hoping none of her unease was showing on her face. "Good afternoon." Maria sounded formal, and the words tasted almost bitter on the tip of her tongue. "I am Ambassador Maria Santos from the Terran Federation. I think there has been some kind of a mistake." As soon as the words were out of her mouth, the arena shifted. The sand below her feet turned glossy and solid as crystal. The walls illuminated, their bioluminescent veins throbbing in time with her heart, and the thing across from her, the shining points on its head, shifted to something that almost resembled a smile. Then it spoke. The sound wasn't words. Exactly, it was something more like music, if only music could bear the weight of concepts and emotions. The creature's voice was a cross between chimes made of wind and whale song, and Maria understood it perfectly. "Greetings, acknowledgement, respect," the creature sang. "Identity's designation, Nornal, resonance of distant thunder, purpose clarification, urgency, expression through necessary conflict." Maria blinked. The translator was accustomed to working by technological assist, but this was altogether different, as if her mind had sprouted new neural connections. She was hearing and comprehending the creature in its language. "I don't get you," she said, and wished she hadn't. The hard ice floor at her feet became quicksand. Maria vaulted backwards. Her feet landed firmly on solid ground that couldn't have been there a second before. The head crystals of the being shifted into what may have been concern. "Confusion state dangerous, resonance of distant thunder," sang. "Arena responds -2 emotional linguistic constructs. Precision required for survival." Maria felt her diplomat's mind clicking into gear. I grimaced. The arena was responding to her words, and not just the words. It was in response to the emotional and conceptual heft behind them. When she'd voiced confusion, the ground had given way. When she had canned the creature with diplomatic politeness, the atmosphere had thawed. "I believe I'm starting to get it," she said apprehensively, and she felt the ground harden beneath her feet into honest stone. The creature's real crystals flickered in what could have been a scent. Understanding, growth positive, but expression requirements unchanged. Communication through conflict ancient necessity. "You want to fight me? Need to fight clarification, essential. Words alone insufficient for true communication. KHY tar and species evolution through necessary conflict. Ideas too complex for simple vocalization." Maria grabbed her blaster, not pointing but prepared to use it. It felt almost as though the weapon were alive in her hand, and she realized that the normally steady blue, ready light was pulsing in unison with the bioluminescence of the arena. So this is the way you all talk. Through combat communications, physical-engagement-allows-full-expression-of-complex-concepts. Your -species-diplomatic-methods-insufficient-for-emergency-communication. The creature moved forward, not an attack, but no doubt some kind of dance. It was changing as she moved, showing different patterns in its crystals, and it came to her that she was watching a form of communication that was so complex that it required the whole body to convey. "What emergency?" she said, now starting to shuffle in her seat, her diplomatic training becoming a sort of defensive ballet. Threat approaching galactic scope, time-limited response, raditional-diplomatic-channels, -2-slow-4-survival. The creature was moving with more and more desperation, more and more complexity. It was saying something to her, Maria knew, but the telling was too much for words alone. She had to manipulate it in her hands to get the entire picture of what it was saying. She slid her blaster away and started to mimic the beast's movement. The instant she did, the arena shifted once more. The walls gave way to transparency and not the viewing platforms she had anticipated. There were simply too many stars. And there, stalking the cosmos like a living curse of angular nightmares, was something that caused Maria's heart to grapple with fear and her blood to freeze. "What are those?" she panted, watching huge, jagged forms consume entire star systems. "Light hand meaning devours," the creature crooned, growing more and more agitated. "Approach, inevitable, unless, alliance, formed. Kitharonet, Tempset warning. Other species misinterpret as threats, Maria." Understood now, the belligerent stance, the defiant diplomatic speak. Those apparently bellicose rejoinders to her overtures of peace. They had all been ways of signaling an urgency that could not be sent via usual diplomatic routes. "You've been trying to tell us," she said, in tune with the multiplexity of the creature's dance. "But that's not the way you come to people talking to them. That makes people feel like you're kinda like threatening them, you know? Correct understanding KHY, tar and evolution requires physical engagement for complex idea transmission. Peaceful species in. The monster halted its dance abruptly and reached one of his hands out toward her. Maria hesitated for a beat, then accepted the key. The instant their skin connected, the arena detonated with data, and Maria saw the history of the Kitharon species. How they'd come from creatures which could express only complex emotions and ideas through ritual combat. She watched them try desperately to alert other races to the Devourers. How every diplomatic mission had been perceived as a prelude to an invasion. She witnessed the frustration and the mounting despair of an entire species with vital information it couldn't relay without being misinterpreted. But above all, she saw the solution. The arena, she spoke, with her voice containing new harmonics, the singer's song matching the creature's, responding. It's more than just to our words and our emotions. It's translating them, building a bridge between the way we talk. Correct analysis, brilliant. Arena designed as universal translator for combat communication, but requires active participation from both species. Maria peered around the altered arena, appraising it anew. Not a gladiator pit, but a telegraph. the most advanced translation system in all the world, developed in order to bridge the gap between cultures that had developed totally distinct means of expressing complex ideas. We must record. The arena answered and created a floating panel that appeared to be a mutation of Catharan, crystal tech, and holographic human displays. If we can train other species on how to use this system, galactic alliance possible, coordinated response to vows achievable. For hours they interacted, with Maria learning how to convey ideas through movement and the creature learning to pick up the subtleties of speech. The arena helped them work together to craft tools and interfaces neither could have made alone. We are not making a translation system, Maria observed as they worked. We are making the first, truly universal communication protocol. Correct understanding, but time constraints critical. DEVOURERS approach accelerating. Maria glanced upward at the starfield she could still see through the arena's clear walls. The geometric figures were nearing, and she could see the path of devastation they sowed in their wake of systems. How long do we have? Orbital cycles -6 -maximum before Federation territory reached. 6 months. It was too short a time to form the standard cordial relations with dozens of species. But perhaps it would be long enough to teach them how to operate the communication system attached to the arena. We need to grow this, Maria said, in a sentence that sent a new current of possibility through the arena. Make them in miniaturized forms so we can ship them to other planets. Possibility exists but requires emotional linguistic blueprints from multiple species. In the days ahead, Maria would go on the weirdest diplomatic mission of her career. The Kytherans brought delegates of scores of species to the arena, and Maria learned to communicate between creatures who had never been able before to comprehend each other. There were Xantharians, who spoke by stutters of controlled electromagnetic spew. The arena transformed their electric songs to physical experiences that other species could perceive. Crazy Gang, the morphic collective, who used their bodies to communicate esoteric concepts, saw their thoughts translated into visual patterns, which took over the walls of the arena. Each species had their own way of communicating, and in the arena, it learnt to combine them all. But it was when she trained with the void speakers that Maria had her breakthrough, and everything started to change for her. The void speakers were probably the most alien species she'd ever met. They resided partly outside of regular space-time, but rather conversed through willful absences in reality. When they talked, sections of the universe ceased to exist for seconds at a time, as if the spaces were punctuated by silence and somehow the pauses spoke thinking between the gaps. We understand the impending malevolence. The void speaker transmitted its utterances, essentially punching holes in the fabric of the arena that felt for some reason like urgent whispers, but our warnings actually manufacture absence more than presence. Other creatures perceive our correspondence as threats to their lives. Maria observed the arena failed to translate terms which were effectively defined by nothing. The walls flickered, the bioluminescent veins stuttered, and for a second she was afraid the entire thing would just crash. Then she had an idea. Do not translate what they are saying. She instructed the arena. Translate what they're not saying. The Colosseum froze, systems recalibrating. And then, gradually, the blanks in the picture started to seem not like blanks, but like places where newly blooming understanding might reside. Brilliant insight, revolutionary, sang resonance of distant thunder. Translation through negative space opens new communication dimensions. The breakthrough rippling through the arena systems. Out of nowhere, every species in attendance could now comprehend the words being spoken and unspoken, the emotional subtexts, the cultural assumptions, the unspoken terrors and aspirations hovering beneath every effort to communicate. Dozens of species were getting a real sense of each other for the first time in galactic history. "We have to do a permanent this," Maria said, and the arena shimmered into life with potential, something that can be used everywhere in the galaxy. Concept achievable but requires core understanding from primary facilitator. Maria surveyed the unimaginable spectacle that surrounded her. Delegates of dozens of species were participating in the most complex diplomatic conversation in history, thanks to a system that was part technology, part art, and part something entirely different. The underlying insight, she said with deliberate vagueness, is that communication doesn't have to be simply about the sharing of information. It's about sharing experience. The arena works, in other words, because it is not just translating words. It's translating the whole emotional and conceptual framework that the words exist in relation to. The crowd roared in approval, and Maria felt a change in herself as well. She was no longer just a go-between. She was becoming a creature of the system. Her own diplomatic experience and emotional intelligence entering into the nature of the arena. "We're building the first emotional dictionary between species," she realized. Not just a translation of words, but a translation of what it means to be alive, to think, to feel, across entirely different modes of existence. The work took weeks. Maria was relearning how to think in ways that seemed to append everything. She thought she knew about consciousness and communication. She was taught to suggestions concepts of diplomacy through the Kytheran dance language, to express urgency through Zenthorian electromagnetic pulses, to encapsulate an entire body of exportanly industry with but a simple expression through morphic body sculpting. But more importantly, she gained insight into the emotional reality of each species' mode of communication. Not because the Cathorans were aggressive, but because their nervous systems were unable to process complex emotional information without physical engagement. The void speakers weren't endangering reality through their absences, they were attempting to forge spaces within which new kinds of understanding might thrive. Each species had come to create their own ways to communicate, as answers to primal dilemmas of being and otherness. The arena didn't just translate languages, it translated the entire work of evolution that had taught different kinds of life how to reach one another at all. As the system finished, Maria stood at the middle of the arena, encircled by a hologram. Of the galaxy, the Devourers were clearly visible now. Their shapes, geometric patterns that left a rift of oblivion where star systems had just been. Implementation timeline critical, sang resonance of distant thunder. Galactic deployment required before Devura. Maria nodded, pressing the button which would have initiated the system's copy protocol. "How many arena systems can we build? Thousands possibility exists, but, requires, volunteer, facilitators, from, each species." It was a simple and elegant solution. There would be representatives of each species, to act as emotional translators, individuals who might be able to get a handle on alternating states of consciousness. The arena systems were transported to strategic locations across the galaxy, establishing a network of communication hubs capable of organizing a response to the Devourers. But as Maria readied herself to turn the system on, she noticed something that gave her pause. "This isn't just about ending the Devourers," she said softly. "This is literally rewiring how consciousness interfaces with itself throughout the galaxy. We are not just building a communications architecture, we are building the thought architecture of the 21st century." The arena thrummed with something that seemed like anticipation. All around her, the members of dozens of species were getting ready to head home, bearing the knowledge of how to build and run the communication nodes. But Maria came to understand that they were carrying more than information. They were carrying a new sense of what it means to be interconnected with other life forms. Correct understanding, profound, sang resonance of distant thunder, galactic consciousness, sevolution beginning. But immediate survival still requires coordinated response. Maria initialized the replication protocol, and the arena proceeded to spread across the galaxy. She observed thousands of communication nodes go live, each one enabling insight between species that had never communicated fully before. The reaction to the Devourers was immediate and organized. Species previously separated or hostile started to cooperate, exchange resources and ideas. The unstoppable foe that was geometric entities encountered a galactic alliance that could learn and adapt at a pace and manner that had never been seen before. But while they managed to forestall that immediate threat, Maria knew that they had created something that would be far larger than any single crisis. "We changed everything," she said, as she looked on at the changing mass communications landscape. "Each species in this world of ours is now communicated with every other species in the world in ways that were before impossible," he will declare. "Change inevitable, boot positive," sang resonance of distant thunder. "Galactic consciousness, evolution, natural progression, arena system merely accelerated inevitable development." Maria gazed at the original arena, redesigned into what resembled a living cathedral. The walls were alive with transmissions from every corner of the galaxy, with the ceaseless river of ideas and emotions and experiences that billions of sentient creatures shared every second. "What happens to diplomacy now?" she asked. "What will happen to my job? Everybody can understand everybody else perfectly. Diplomacy, traditional methods insufficient for new reality. But need for facilitators greater than ever." Maria understood. The arena system did not eliminate the need for diplomacy, it altered it. They would not be maneuvering between distinct, insular species, plotting a course through enmity and friendship. They would be nurturing a growth, helping a galactic awareness to rise to its feet and begin to walk and think, to dream as yet clumsy and halting in one voice. "The first emotional dictionary between two species," she said, and her words sent a tremble through the arena that felt like pride. "But it's not only a dictionary. It's a living document, constantly expanding and changing as we learn more and more about what it means to be alive in the universe." And, as the months went on, Maria hosted something no human in galactic history had ever hosted before. The communications network had gone far beyond its initial function and become a kind of collective brain where people could share more than mere data, but experiences, feelings, a sort of even dreams. Artists of disparate species were collaborating on pieces that incorporated more than one form of consciousness. Scientists were learning things that they wouldn't have been able to learn without being able to think in fundamentally different ways. But, more than anything, the galaxy seemed to be learning to look at itself as then single, complex, infinity beauteous entity that it truly was. made up in its collective infinity by infinite differing forms of life, each life form adding its own infinity of perspectives toward the making of the all-that's. And the Devourers met not a mere group of diversified, fragile species, but a collective mind combining its abilities into a force that could shape and react. 2 threats faster and in ways no single species alone could have managed. The geometrical entities did not vanish. They we absorbed and given their own form of consciousness, incorporated into the amassing galactic consciousness. Maria was inside. The first arena room, which was the central room of the communication link setup. Their sides a steady stream of communications from everywhere in the galaxy. Not just words and images, but raw emotions, shared memories, communal dreams. We did it, she said, her words rippling through the network, through billions of beings conscious and otherwise. We made something that none of us could have begun to conceive. Is the achievement never recognizing appropriate resonance of distant thunder sang? Its split crystal head rippled with patterns Maria knew better than her own face. But creation ongoing, never complete. Galactic consciousness still growing still learning. Maria nodded, now knowing that her official duties as a diplomatic translator had changed to something completely different. She was yet another of those facilitators of consciousness who help a galaxy to think and feel and dream as a galaxy, so to speak. But still, she had always respected, or had recognized anyway, all the different perspectives of all the different perspectives of all the different forms of life. The language of war, she said, recalling her initial terrifying moments in the arena. If that wasn't exactly what this was supposed to be, but the war was never the point. Correct understanding complete. Language of connection more accurate description. Combat merely one method of reaching across consciousness barriers. The sun, which was setting on the Kyathara Prime, was bathing the arena in gold and amber, and Maria felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Not that her work was done, it would never be done, but because she had found a role within something bigger than herself. Around her, the arena pulsed, alive with the dreams and fears and hopes of a million species. Off in the distance she watched the lights of new construction, the Catharans adding more communication nodes to send and receive the burgeoning network traffic. And all throughout the galaxy were billions of sentient beings that were learning to understand each other in ways that had never been possible before. Maria closed her eyes and allowed the totality of what they had done to wash over her. It wasn't just a translation system. It wasn't just a communication network, either. It was a different level of consciousness. A way for the galaxy to think and feel and dream together as one, while still recognizing all of the unbelievable diversity of life that made that unity possible. The next time she opened her eyes, she was not Ambassador Maria Santos of the Terran Federation. She was new and never before a mediator of galactic minds, a gap bridger between forms of life so different they had once been nearly impossible to put in touch. The arena throbbed with approval, and Maria sensed the network feeling her presence. Billions of thoughts acknowledging her as the creator of something that would alter the course of galactic history forever. She'd come to Kyathara Prime as a diplomat, skilled in the light art of reaching compromises. She was leaving as co-author of the first emotional dictionary between species, the architect of a system of communication whereby the galaxy itself could speak with one voice while singing in a million different languages. The language of war was now the language of kinship. The facilitator of galactic consciousness, Maria Santos, former ambassador, knew the real work had only just begun, and as she strides towards the exit of the arena, the walls convey one final message from the network, but not in words, per se, but in pure emotional essence. It was gratitude in the 89th minute of an incredible performance. It was the myriad forms of appreciation of billions of sentient life forms for the woman who had shown them how to find their voice. Maria laughed. All the gravity of the planet's appreciation and the weight of all that lay ahead of her. The arena sealed behind her, but the network still throbbed with vibrant life. Dreams and hopes synonymous with the aspirations of an inescapable multitude of species, each on its way to realms where comprehension was no longer constrained by the boundaries of consciousness. The diplomat had become something more than she could have ever imagined, and the galaxy would never be the same.